Rishi to the rescue, as Rishi Sunak rescued Scotland from transgender ideology by trying to block the Gender Recognition Act reform. Well, not really. Let me explain why. Now, let's imagine a spectrum of gender recognition acts. We could go from a 0, which is the Scottish Family Party's position, no such thing as a Gender Recognition Act. A man can't be declared a woman under the law, and vice versa. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, we could have Gender Recognition Act 10. That means people can change gender at any age. They can choose from a list of over 100 genders. They can change gender as many times as they like, as often as they wish, with no delay, just immediately, no reference to any other person, such as a parent or a doctor. That would be 10. So that's the scale. 0, Scottish Family Party, to 10, absolutely anything goes. I would say the UK policy at the moment, the Gender Recognition Act 2004, would maybe be a 4 on that scale. Scotland, the Scottish Parliament has voted to move to what I would describe as maybe a 6 on that scale. Thinking about the different political parties, where would they like to be? It seems like the Greens would be like to be about at an 8. The Lib Dems would like to be at about a 7. The SNP, 6. Labour, 5.5. Conservative, 4.5. Because they want to reform the Gender Recognition Act. They don't like what's happened in Scotland, so they say. But they do think it needs to be improved in various ways. The Alba Party, renowned for being anti-Gender Recognition Act reform, I would say they're a 4.5, because they also want to reform the Gender Recognition Act. They just don't think the SNP have quite got it right. And then we've got the Scottish Family Party on 0. Now, all the other parties, over time, I would predict that they will creep up the scale, slowly but surely. Or maybe not slowly. Anyway, they'll go up the scale. The Scottish Family Party will remain resolutely at 0. So are the Conservatives, UK and Scottish, really so appalled by the shift from a 4 to a 6 on my scale? Or are they just spying an opportunity to attack the SNP Green government that's outpacing public opinion just a little bit too much? I believe it is the latter. Because the critical principle here is the very concept of legal gender change. They're not interested in that. But once that's been conceded, then the floodgates are open. Transgender ideology is going to swamp culture, politics, and most dangerously of all, schools. That's exactly what's happening in the UK and in Scotland. And the Conservatives don't really show any desire to stop that. Yes, they'll drag their heels over each step along the way, but they'll never strike at the heart of the problem, which is the ideology of transgenderism. So the Conservatives don't actually care about transgender ideology. But there's one thing they do care about, and that is the union. So like the SNP, the Conservatives, Scottish and UK, they see every issue in Scotland through the constitutional lens. So the Conservative Party look at this and they say, right, gender recognition reform, this is an opportunity to promote unionism and to undermine nationalism. So let's not kid ourselves for a moment. The Conservatives are really concerned about the legal rights to run single-sex clubs or the rules on equal pay for men and women. Because that's what they're claiming. The Conservatives are claiming that there are these sort of minor technical problems with the gender recognition reform in Scotland. I mean, monitoring equal pay for men and women. I mean, the fact that you can change gender a little bit younger in Scotland and then maybe move to England. I mean, they really think we're going to take that seriously. They're just excuses that they've found to block the Gender Recognition Act reform. Notice the reason they haven't put forward the reason this is going to mess up young people. This is going to result in 16-year-olds, 14, 15-year-olds looking forward to it as well. It's going to send them down a path, encourage them down a path, invite them down a path that's going to be extremely destructive to them for years to come. Are the Conservatives put that reason forward? Absolutely not. Because actually the move from a 4 to a 6 on the scale, the Conservatives are not really bothered about that. But this is their logic. It's quite simple. The UK Conservatives think if the UK government stops the Scottish government from introducing an unpopular measure, opinion polls suggest the majority of people in Scotland don't want the Gender Recognition Act reform that the Scottish Parliament has voted for. So the UK government thinks, the Conservatives think, if they can stop that, surely Scots will harbour eternal gratitude to the Conservatives and to the Union, and they'll think to themselves, thank goodness we're in the Union, otherwise we'd have that crazy gender law. Now you can see the logic there. It's quite simple. I fear it might be naive. I think the hardcore progressive Scottish nationalists will be inflamed and energised by it, and it will give them an extra grievance to present to the people of Scotland. I think hardcore small c conservative unionists will be delighted by it. But what about the people that really matter in terms of the constitutional debate? The people the Conservatives are really trying to influence, they're the people in the middle, the undecided, the uncommitted. What will they think is more important? Tweaking the Gender Recognition Act or the UK government overruling the democratically elected government of Scotland? Now, I'm not sure the Conservatives have calculated this one correctly. I think this might backfire. But the Conservatives, as I say, they're not the enemy of transgender ideology. To quote their Scottish Equalities spokeswoman, Rachel Hamilton, just a couple of weeks ago, she said, "No one denies the importance of furthering trans rights." I must be no one then. No one denies the importance of furthering trans rights. They are, however, the enemy of Scottish nationalism. But I think their tactic here might be miscalculated. I mean, in Scotland, the enemy of transgender ideology is the Scottish Family Party. We are alone in calling for the repeal of the 2004 Gender Recognition Act. Why do we do that? Because a man can't become a woman can't become a man. Simple. So I'm claiming here that, in my view, the actions of the Conservative government, the UK Conservative government, is just cynical opportunism. They're using the transgender issue in order to advance a different agenda, which is their unionism. You might agree or disagree with their objective, but that is what's driving this. That's what's driving it. It's not some sort of principled opposition to transgender ideology. Now, on the back of that, something's happened very, very interesting the very next day to do with the conversion therapy ban. Let's just have a quick recap, first of all, on the history of the conversion therapy ban with the Conservative government. First of all, a year or so ago, the Conservative government looked into all of this. Do we need a conversion therapy ban? And they came to the conclusion, having consulted the experts, they said, no, we do not need this law, so we're not going to do it. Then there was a Twitter storm and lots of people complaining and saying that was outrageous. So the Conservative government said, okay then, we will do it. Okay. In other words, they will introduce a law that they themselves thought was not necessary in order to appease some noisy activists. Yeah, so having said they are going to introduce a conversion therapy ban in any case, they said, but we won't include trans in it. So if parents are speaking to a child, encourage them to reconsider their change of gender identity. The Conservatives were saying, we won't cover that, that's not necessary. But then what happened the day after they blocked the gender recognition reform in Scotland? They say, actually, we will include transgenderism in our conversion therapy ban. Now, why have they done that? To me, it seems absolutely transparent and absolutely obvious what they're thinking at Conservative Party HQ. They're thinking, right, we've blocked the gender recognition reform in Scotland, which we think is a good move from the point of view of the union. It's in our self-interest. But people might think we're a bit anti-trans. They might think we're a bit transphobic. So what do we better do? We better even things up a bit. So the very next day, let's announce that we're including transgenderism in our conversion therapy ban. And then, we'll be covering all bases there. So, people who might be prosecuted under a conversion therapy ban in England and Wales for, say, speaking to someone with homosexual orientation who wants to move away from that, those people have been prosecuted, punished, fined, whatever, basically because of a Twitter storm. Not because the government thought that the law was necessary, but because there was a Twitter storm. And now, for example, parents who speak to a child and encourage them not to go down the road of gender identity change, they might be prosecuted. Again, not because the Conservative Party thought that that's a necessary law, but because it suited their PR strategy at this point in time, because they didn't want to be vulnerable to accusations of transphobia. So that will result in real people being arrested, prosecuted, families torn apart, just sacrificed for the sake of the Conservative Party's PR strategy. So the Conservative Party is weak and unprincipled. They don't stand for anything apart from keeping themselves in power. So with the Scottish Gender Recognition Act, they've done something that will have a good effect, but for the wrong reason. When it comes to the conversion therapy ban, they're doing the wrong thing for the wrong reasons. So when it comes to transgender ideology, if you want to oppose it, if you want people to argue against it, if you want it pushing out of schools, the Scottish Family Party is the party for you. So why don't you join us right now via the link below. Thanks.